Okay, I'm going to make a little video to help out with the retest on Module 12. The two areas that were particularly weak are 12.2 and 12.4, so those are the areas that I'm going to focus on. All right, we're supposed to subdivide this. So remember, if it's 7 to 1, we add those together, and that becomes the bottom number, so that's 8. And so it's going to be 7/8. So we're going to do 7/8 of the distance. And this is 7/8 of the distance from A to B. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and plot these points as well. So I got -1, 5. So I'd do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there's A. And then I have B. I got 7, -3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Like about right there. Oops. Okay. 1, 2. Technical difficulties. Awesome. Oh, great. Okay. So that finally worked. All right. So I'm gonna make a segment. All right. So 7/8 of the distance, and then the next thing is we figure out what is the total rise. So we need to figure out the total rise, and the total rise, I'm spelling rise with a Z, that's nice. So total rise, that is the Y, and let's figure out what that is. So the total rise, what we do is if we're going from A to B, we're going to subtract the Y coordinates. So we're going to do -3 minus 5, and that's going to be -8. So the total rise, and see if it makes sense. If you go from A to B, you're going down, and then you're going over. And see if that really makes sense, that you would go down -8, and that the sign seems correct. And now we're going to figure out the total run. So that's the X value. So total run. And so that's going to be subtracting the X's. So that would be 7 minus a -1, and that would be 8. And doesn't that seem reasonable that you're moving in the positive direction? So that would be 8. Next, we need to figure out what is 7/8 of those distances. So we need to figure out what is 7/8 times -8. And remember, -8 is really -8 over 1 when it's not written as a fraction. So then we can see that the 8s would cancel out, and we would have -7. That's going to be the amount we need to rise, or actually go down 7. Okay, next we're going to figure out what is 7/8 of 8. So we can see the 8s would cancel out, so that would be 7. So that means we're going to go over 7. So we would go down 7 and over 7 to get to that particular spot we're looking for. So next, what we do is we take our original value, A, and we go ahead and make those adjustments. So that means if we're looking for point P, it's going to be -1, plus the adjustment, and then it's going to be, the Y value is going to be 5 plus the adjustment. So with the -1, we have to make sure we do the right thing. So we can see that the total run is 7, and that deals with the X's. So we're going to add 7. The Y value deals with the rise, and we can see that that's -7. So we're going to say 5 plus a -7, or 5 minus 7, which is the same thing. So -1 plus 7 is 6, and 5 minus 7 is -2. So that's our point. All right. The next thing that I'm going to do is, it would be great if you just even got that problem right on the retest. I might come back to this one, or maybe I will do this one right now. Let's see. So find the coordinates of D on BC in a 1 to 3 ratio. So another way of saying this is 1 to 3. So you still have to add those together to get that bottom number, bottom part of the fraction. So that's a 4. And then, so that means it's 1/4 of the distance. So just like we were doing before. So we need to figure out what is 1/4 of the distance. Oops. Oh boy. That's not what I want to do. Okay. So I'll be able to start that one again. So 1/4 of the distance. Okay. So we need to figure out 1/4 of the distance on this segment right here, on BC. So we're going to figure out the total rise and the total run. So total rise is always the y value. So we're going to subtract, since we're going from B to C, we're going to do -5 minus 1. And it looks like its total rise is -6. So that makes sense. The total run doesn't look like there's really any change because the x's haven't changed. So we'll go ahead and do it still. So we'll do 7 minus 7, 0. Okay, so then what we do is we figure out what is that fraction we talked about. So this is going to be 1/4 of the distance. Okay, 1/4 of the distance. That's this 1-to-3 ratio right here. It was a 1-to-3 ratio, and so we add those together to get that bottom number. So it's 1/4 the distance. Okay, so now that means we're going to figure out what is 1/4 times -6. So that means that's -3/2. I'm sorry, that's -6/4, which reduces to -3/2. So that means we're going to go down. So from the point here at 7,1, we're going to go down 3/2. So that means we're going to be right, and it's causing me troubles, but it's right there. That's -3/2. So that point, so find the coordinates of point D, it would be 7, because that part hasn't changed. It would be 7, and then it would be, so the coordinates would be 7, comma, and then we'd have to do 1 minus 3/2 to get the change, to get that point D. So that would be 7, comma, and 1 minus 3/2 is -1/2. And you can tell from the graph, it looks like it's down just a half. So 7, comma, -1/2. All right, it says using your answer from number 8, find E so that DE is parallel to AB. So let's see. So this is remember point D, and we have to find a point on this little segment that is parallel. So it would go like this, it'd be perfectly parallel. It would be these two are what we're talking about as parallel. So DE, this would be the E point right here. So DE would be parallel to AB. What would that point be? Well, of course, it would be the same, height, if you will. It's still at -1/2. We would just have to figure out, where the x value is. So let's see what we want to do. And let's see. And by the way, that ratio is the same ratio. So this ratio is a 1-to-3 ratio. So then, of course, this ratio is also 1-to-3. That's AE over EC. So this part, let's go ahead and do that. Let's say that's a 1-to-3 ratio. Now, the coordinates of E, let's try to figure out a good way to get that. So it looks like this point here, it's going over, it looks like it's right at 2.5. So I would say it's 2.5, or I'll say 5/2, and then -1/2. So you can tell it's kind of like this goes 1, 1, and then 2, 1, and then it's right in the middle there. Okay, so I'm going to just go with that for right now, and then we're going to do a couple of the 12/4s. Okay, so let's see, get to that 12/4 section. Okay, remember 12/4 deals with those proportions. So there are 3 really good proportions. So this one utilizes that middle one. So there's a left one, a middle one, and a right one. So this one utilizes the middle one because you can tell it utilizes this length and that length, the two middle lengths, and then the altitude. So the proportion goes like this. It's 2 over 3 equals 3 over x. So the 3, this altitude, goes in both of these spots. So then we can cross multiply. So 2x equals 9, and then divide by 2. So x equals 9 over 2, final answer. So that's a tiny bit messy, so hold on a second. So 9 over 2. All right, so I'll just knock out a couple of these and see if you get the hang of it. All right, so that's that one. Okay, next one. So this one I would say is utilizing the right side because it has this side, the whole thing. So this proportion goes this over this equals this over the whole thing. Okay, so the proportion goes 12 over x is equal to x over the whole thing, which would be adding those two together. So that is 12 plus 4, so 16. All right, so now we cross multiply. So then we multiply 12 times 16. So let's do that. So let's see, get my calculator out here too. So it's a little easier. So 12 times 16. Okay, so that's 192. And then to solve for x, we just take the square root. So square root of 192. All right, so that was a right one. So we did the center, we did the right. Let's see if there's one that actually has a left. Now, if it's sort of upside down like this, I would do a rewrite. So remember we talked about that. So I would redraw, let's say. So just kind of draw it so it's a better orientation. It doesn't really look like it, but that's all right. All right, so picture this one. This would be the 11. This would be the 5. Doesn't look like it at all, but that's all right. This would be the y, and then the x would be this. If you can picture it kind of turned sideways. All right, so now what we would do is let's find this first. So that would be 11 over y is equal to y over 5. This is the middle one, the center one. So then we're going to cross multiply. So that's y squared equals 55. And then we would take the square root of both sides. So y is the square root of 55. All right. Then we can do, so that'll get us the y. So then we can find the x. And the x is going to be what I would consider the right proportion. So that's 5 over x is equal to x over the whole thing. So that's 11 plus 5, so that's 16. Then we cross multiply, x squared, and then equals 16 times 5, which should be 80, but I'll just do it still. So 16 times 5, 80, and then we'll do the square root. So x equals the square root of 80, which is okay for our purposes, or we can simplify. So we could pull out the perfect squares. So that would be 16 times 5. So that means you could take the square root of 16, which would be 4. So that's also 4 square root of 5. So either of those would be fine on the celebration. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers, that proportion in the 12.4. All right, sounds good. I'm going to end there.